There are several ways to start a new diagram in ABACUS. If you have the Explorer window open, you can simply browse to the architecture of interest. In the Diagrams node, right-click and select Create Diagram. Alternatively, you can go Insert Diagram from the menus, or click the Create New Diagram button here. The New Diagram Configuration dialog appears. If you haven't chose Create a Diagram from within an architecture, you'll need to choose the architecture of interest here. You'll then choose the viewpoint that you'd like to use to start the diagram. Now, depending on the library you're using in ABACUS, you'll have different viewpoints available. This library is the ABACUS framework, and so there's various viewpoints drawing on best practice frameworks such as BPMN and UML. If you're using something like TOGAF, you'll have different viewpoints, and Archimate different viewpoints again. Here though, let's choose the process diagram BPMN viewpoint to start our diagram. In this case, let's just click OK. Here we give the diagram a name, for example, Process 1. A blank diagram canvas appears, and the stencil window is pre-populated with the shapes relevant for this viewpoint. If the stencil window isn't visible, click View, Stencil to show it. To add new content to this diagram and to the repository itself, we simply drag and drop from the stencil. For example, let's drag a department to the top of the diagram here. We could give it a name, but let's just leave the default value of New Department 1. Why not add another department below that first department, placing it here. Now we could add, for example, a start event as well to this diagram. Now notice as we drag the cursor over the department, it shows the highlight on the border here green. Now that indicates that a start event could be a valid child of a department. So let's drop it here. Now to the right of that, let's put a process. And again, the highlighting shows that a process could be a child of a department, but it couldn't be a child of a start event. That's what the red means. Let's drop it to the right of the process here. Now let's add another process, again showing the valid places with the highlighting where a process could be dropped. Here you could see a process could be a child of another process. That is, we can have hierarchical processes as well. But let's drop it to the right for now. And finally, let's add an AND event. And again, AND events could be children of processes, departments, but not children of start events. Let's drop it out to the right here. So that's how you add processes and AND events and start events, or in general, components to diagrams in ABACUS. To add new connections or relationships to diagrams in ABACUS, there are two main techniques. We can go to the Connections tab here in the stencil window and then simply drag and drop. So let's take the sequence flow here, and as we hover the cursor over the different elements, we can see that a sequence flow couldn't be connected as the start end to a department. However, it could of course be the start to a new start event. So let's drop it there. The other end of the connector finds the nearest white space, and then we can connect this end of the connector to whichever component we like. In this case, showing that a new process is a valid endpoint for a sequence flow. So that's how you create connections from the stencil, but alternatively we can use ABACUS's Smart Connector mode. Here we connect the little symbol here, choose the connection type we like, in this case sequence flow. Now the cursor, as we hover over various elements, it'll highlight to tell us what's valid. So here the start event of a sequence flow would be valid to be connected to a process, that's what's green, but of course back to department it couldn't be connected there. So consecutive elements that we click will be connected. So here we have a new process connected to another process, and now the start event of the next sequence flow could be connected through to an end event like that. Now we have to be careful to go back out of connector mode by clicking the cursor here. So they're the two main techniques for creating connections in ABACUS. And finally, let's have a look at what happens as we move existing content around on a diagram. For example, let's what happens when we move new process 2 from department 1 to department 2. So as we break it down here, notice how as soon as we break outside of the border of new department 1, several things happen. Firstly, the border of new process 2 goes blue. Blue highlighting indicates a floating component. Secondly, notice how there's a parent indicator going back to new department 1 with a diamond on the end. And finally, notice how new department 2 is highlighted green. This indicates that it could be a valid place to drop this component. So as we drop it, a little pop-up appears asking us, do we actually want to change the parent to new department 2, or do we want to keep existing parent? For now, let's keep the existing parent. So that's how the element would be shown, and it continues to be shown with a blue border to indicate that it's floating. Now if we were to move the component back to the original place, because it was its parent, nothing additional is shown. But alternatively, let's drag it across this time, but change it to new department 2. This time, of course, new department 2 becomes the parent. There's no parent indicator, and we can see the border here is green, indicating that it's within its new parent.